if I had to go off a mountain somewhere and end it, it would be on there.
And it'd be recorded on
Looking
Zoom.
like that.
It'd be recorded on Zoom.
Yeah.
That will make
Go
a
viral.
good blockbuster.
Watch Nick's final talk.
Cool. I'm just hooking this up. I think we are live now on Facebook. Okay, good stuff. Guys, thanks for joining me. David, Nick, Maxwell, and Dee. I think we've got, what, two continents. I'm actually in Canada, so I'm in the North American continent as per three of you guys. And we also have Australasia here represented by Dee. The reason I called this together was, I've been doing some research. I know you guys have posted some stuff on your wall, and Nick's gone one step further and created a manuscript for everyone, I guess, to kind of find out what to do. Like, this is unknown territory. Facebook have obviously put some publicity behind it, and they have their own reasons for doing so. Apple have their reasons for introducing this. They're all about the user. There's nothing to do with profit when it comes to Apple. But the truth is somewhere in between. Both companies are money-making machines. Look, the five of us here are money-making machines as well. And at the end of the day, this will impact businesses. How big or how small, who knows? Like, I think it was Max who posted something about the summer. Someone posted about the summer boycott Facebook campaign and stuff like that. It created some small PR, but it did not impact Facebook whatsoever. This has impacted Facebook. For Facebook to go and take out ads in newspapers and talk about this, they are massively concerned. And if Facebook are concerned, then you know what, we should be too. And the other side of this is, having spoken to Facebook, I don't really think they know what to recommend and what to do, because there's so much unknown with how users are going to react, and then what happens with all that data and how much data they're going to miss and tracking and things like that. So, if Facebook don't know, where do you turn? Facebook are doing their own thing, trying to share what they can. But, I would argue, and I think the guys on this call would also argue, we're kind of at the coal face. We're in the weeds. We're seeing this day in, day out. We have various tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions in ad spend just in 2020. And that experience that we have, we are closer to this probably than a lot of people at Facebook, and the engineers, product managers, etc. I've done my own research. I have my own understanding, and I'm now keen to see whether the guys here validate that. For the guys on the live, any questions you have, we'll try and cover them off. We're all here to learn as much as the next person as well. So I guess before we start, just quick intros. David, do you want a quick one-liner, who you are and your company?
Sure, yeah, no problem. So David Schloss of Convert ROI. I've been running ads for 13 years and focus primarily on Facebook and Instagram. Cool.
Max, over to you.
I'm Max. Nice to meet you guys. That's own a company called Unicorn Innovations. We used to do a lot more agency stuff on the media buying side, have pivoted more heavily to performance offers and internal brands. So we have some pretty large e-commerce brands. A lot are in the conservative space, the collectible space. And so it's been a big pivot of ours. So have some interesting perspective on Facebook and other channels. And it won't be too technical today. For me, I think there's some other people on here that can talk technically, but I have some higher level thoughts to share. So it should be an interesting conversation.
Absolutely. And you mentioned other platforms. This is not just a Facebook problem, but we'll come to that anyway.
Also, I'm Dee's maker now in the vampire world and Clubhouse. Once somebody's under your umbrella, once you've made them, and then they make other baby vampires, baby Clubhouse vampires. So Dee was nice. my original maker.
On that note, Dee, over to you.
Yes, I am the downstream of Maxwell, and any spawn that comes after will be a Finn Dang spawn. I run Red Hook Digital, co-founder there. So unlike Maxwell, we've kind of still stayed in an agency world across all kinds of e-commerce verticals over in the US and here in Australia as well. And today's going to be interesting. Today's going to be a very interesting one, I think.
Absolutely. So quick intro, I'm Deepesh, run SM Commerce Agency. So I've got agency and run my own accounts as well in e-com and info. So quite interested from both sides of the equation to see kind of where this is going. We've lost Nick. I think he was up in the mountains, but I'm sure he'll join us again soon.
Maybe not though. That was pretty treacherous.
Well, yeah, let's hope he does.
We need to send an SOS party. I think we give him 10 minutes, and then if we don't, we call the police.
Yeah, I think so. We'll keep a close eye on that one.
It's like we were watching Ice Truckers.
Yeah, absolutely. Although the sunshine was looking good, so hopefully there weren't too much ice out there. Now this is like this one got people talking. Like Tim Cook tweeted this, and one thing that I saw in the comments were like, does it only impact Facebook? Because they obviously in the screenshot he called out Facebook. This is a mock-up, or maybe it is the final one, of how the screen will pop up to users. What was your thoughts on Tim tweeting this specific message?
I'll jump in. I mean, he and Zuckerberg have been going back and forth what seems like the whole year. They take these indirect jabs at each other all the time, and it seemed like an easy target to go after Facebook since they seem to be the most vocal this year. Not to mention many of us are very vocal about how we're using the platform, and they came under fire with the whole political side of things with the election and whatnot this year. So it just seemed like an easy target. But you could see the amount of press and conversation it generated by calling out Facebook versus them calling out, let's say, Google with their AdWords platform, because we're still talking about it, right? It's continually coming up every day, multiple times a day in groups, in our feeds. I mean, I've gotten texts about it, phone calls about it. I mean, it's constant. It doesn't stop. So to me, it wasn't just a great conversation starter. I think he did it intentionally, call out the platform where everyone's talking all the time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like if you're going to make a statement, you don't go after the small fish, right? You go after the biggest player that has the most to lose, and you specifically target them. And then if you're anybody else, whether you're TikTok or Snapchat or any other platform that relies on third-party tracking or pixels, like you kind of get the gist, right? It's if Apple's gonna take down Facebook and go after Facebook, like, yeah, we're in the crosshairs too. We're just not big enough to justify like Tim Cook tweet, right? Maybe some VP level engineer might tweet about us, but yeah, I mean, it's a very fascinating place to be right now. At the end of the day, I think like what this shows to me at least, and this has been something I've been talking about, thinking about for quite some time, is like really Apple is they control everything. Like Apple has tremendous power if you think about it, right? Like there's not been a company in history where other companies that are 50, $100 billion companies are at the mercy of another company, right? Whether you're Netflix, whether you're Spotify, whether you're Epic Games, any of these companies, right? Like they are, at the end of the day, like if Apple decides, I don't want, you're not playing ball, I don't want you on the platform anymore, like they can wipe out your entire user base. Like that's pretty crazy when you think about it. And I mean, at the end of the day, like Apple's probably the only institution, I don't care, public government, private company that has the power and the influence in the clout to make Facebook make any substantive changes. I don't think any government can. I don't care if the government breaks Facebook up or fines Facebook. If breaking them up will take years, if it changes anything, fines, like it'll be hard to find them enough to make a difference. But Apple's able to go right where it hurts and go after their business model. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be an interesting 2021 to see how the battle turns out. And the last thing I'll say here, and then I'll move on, is like Facebook's PR, I think, is handled pretty horribly, right? If I'm Facebook's PR company, like if you're trying to show, okay, this is an equal fight, you got to come at them better than removing their page verification. Like that was one of the dumbest, most embarrassing things ever. Here's Apple and Tim Cook saying, you know what, we're going to destroy your entire business model. You're a multi-$100 billion company, and we can destroy your business basically like this. And their move in response was a few Wall Street Journal ads and removing their blue check mark, right? Like that's, if anybody has a question, like where the power lies here and which company has more leverage, that about says it all, I think.
That was a good shout. It's like a parent that gets frustrated with a kid and says, right, I'm taking your iPad away. You're being naughty, go to your room. I don't think Apple cared. Dee, what are your thoughts? So they're kind of high level.
I think just echoing what the guys are saying, it's you know, Facebook's the very obvious target, even in the public's eye. I mean, if you keep scrolling down with the tweet, you'll see a whole bunch of people really vocally hating Facebook, and you know, just saying stuff like that's my data, and you know, it also makes it really easy for the mass consumer to wrap their heads around it when you have Cambridge Analytica with, you know, almost like paired together with the word Facebook. It's almost, you can't decouple those two terms. And then you've got all those Netflix documentaries like The Social Dilemma, I think it's called, and a few other ones, same type of deal. So it's just interesting to see how politicized Silicon Valley is when it comes to something like this. And web privacy has been talked about for so long. I think it's just really coming to a head now with Apple making this move. That being said, though, you know, it's the information coming out of Apple is really partial. I mean, looking at the docs and looking at some stuff a bit more technically speaking, it is fairly partial at this point. So watching all of the ad platforms, predominantly Facebook, we've been talking to our Google rep as well, but watching them try to respond to this in a really patchy kind of way as well. I mean, it's one thing to message, you know, Facebook ad chat support and try to get, and you know, you elicit some type of a partial answer or not good enough answer, but this is Facebook docs looking at that going, well, it might look like this and it may look like that. That's when it becomes really tough at the coalface to be able to respond to that properly and make the right calls. Because it's, you drop something like this and then you go to the docs to go, okay, well, how does this actually interact with all the ad platforms? How does it interact with websites, et cetera? It is, it's a real challenge.
So Apple brought out, I think a year or two ago, a similar update, and it was around GPS tracking. So apps could or had to request permission. I saw a stat somewhere, I can't remember where I saw it, but it said something like 50% of people accepted GPS tracking. Now, I would argue GPS is less intrusive than tracking everything you do on your mobile. What's your thoughts on, you know, what kind of percentage of acceptance rate do you think may happen? Because like my thoughts are 50% would be absolutely amazing if 50% of people said, yeah, you know what, I'll allow Facebook to track my data, I'll let Snapchat track my data, I'll let TikTok track my data. I can imagine a lot of people just saying, you know what, this is great, I get a bit more control, and just saying no.
Yeah, I mean, there's no incentive to, right? It's like the change from opt out to opt in is massive, and right now it's opt out, and it's been opt out for a little while, and like it's a lot of effort for people to go through the process of opting out of something. Right? You got to go find it, and like it's really that. Am I really getting that much or losing that much? But when like how this is going to be worded and positioned to users makes it seem pretty bad. Like it's not positioned as a positive thing, right? It's not positioned as, hey, do you want to stop receiving personalized deals and discounts on your favorite brands and see highly relevant ad? Like it's not positioned that way. And obviously they're going to give Facebook the ability to explain that. And that's kind of what the screenshot shows. But like just the way the part that Apple controls, just the word track, like the words they're using have very negative connotations. And at the end of the day, most people don't trust Facebook. So it's like Facebook can say everything they want in there, and they could say all the things that we know, which is, hey, by opting out of this, like a lot of the average person doesn't understand what happens with tracking. They don't understand all this technical stuff. They think that they see all the negative stuff, right? They're mining my data, and there's Cambridge Analytica, and there's all this bad stuff, but they don't understand, hey, those great ads I see where I get those 25% off discounts that seem very serendipitous because it's in my cart, like that all happens because of tracking. And so once you click that do not track, a lot of people are going to start seeing less and less relevant ads. They're going to stop seeing those great deals and discounts from their favorite brands they like to see, the best, like when there's a new product drop, when there's a flash sale, all these things that people have just gotten used to, they don't connect the dots. But the problem is Facebook being the one explaining that, like, I think a lot of people are going to have the mindset of, well, is that really true? Is it not true? I think Mark Zuckerberg might be the least trusted person in the world right now. So that's going to be a real challenge. I think the opt-in rates are going to be super, super low, at least for the first year. So I think it's going to take a while for people to start understanding what opting out looks like and any negatives that come with that.
That's really cool. So on that note, so let's say there's a low uptake, let's say 0% accept it. Conservatively, you might lose 20, 25% of your tracking if you have users on iOS 14, could be anywhere up to 40%. And I got that 40% based on majority of our traffic and the accounts, 80% is mobile, of which roughly 50% is iOS. So then that's 40% of the total 100. So if you lose 40% of your data from an advertiser's point of view, what's the impact? And you know, I'm keen to know your opinions. I know there's a lot of misinformation out there and what that means as well. But what do you guys understand from that?
Yeah, I mean, from our standpoint, I think it would be more from a brand to brand sort of correlation because, for example, we have some clients where they have an overwhelming amount of Android users versus iOS, right? Whereas the ones that are iOS heavy, let's say, for example, like my coach consulting clients, a lot of them have iOS users, right? So to lose that amount of ability to track and retarget and things of that nature to that audience would be not necessarily detrimental in a sense where like their whole business could fall apart, but they definitely would feel a difference in their performance right out of the gate, right? They could definitely see a drop, at least in the initial interim of like this whole rollout. Maybe they would see that their ad performance is far less than what they're used to. And they would just have to figure things out from a tracking standpoint on the back end. You know, that's why we're already starting to see more people talk about like, hey, all that focus you didn't put on lead gen or email marketing or, you know, follow up through text and all these other methodologies that we've been talking about for years. Well, guess what? Now you're sort of forced to learn it because that's going to be the way that you're going to be able to essentially keep your leads intrigued and interested and staying on top of whatever it is you're putting out there, other than just being 100% reliant on Facebook or Instagram ads, for example. So I think you'll feel it, you'll see it, you know, from an advertiser standpoint, we'll look at the data and go, well, this sucks, but that'll also force us to pay more attention to what's going on in the back end. And of course, you know, for all of us who test aggressively in various niches, we're going to find a solution. It's just going to take us some time. Probably, I think another, 3 to 6 months from now, if we did this again, all of our sentiments would be different.
Yeah, and I'm not ashamed to admit I'm a techie, so I went into the technical side. I had a look at the developer side of things. From what I've seen, app install advertisers, they're going to be hit worse because they're going to get pretty much no signals back from those that don't want to track. As e-com, as info, anyone that's transacting through the website, at least if that click comes out of that app, the Facebook app, then it hits a browser, and that browser does allow tracking on the iOS. Or if they go onto a website on their desktop and things like that, you can still track. So one of the things I wanted to discuss is I've seen people say, oh, it's not that urgent, it's not that important. All you need to do is install CAPI, Conversion API, and it solves everything. I completely disagree with that. I'm keen to get your opinion. I say that because Conversion API can read data at the server level based on something being sent back from the browser. It will see nothing if, for example, someone's browsing Facebook on the iOS app and they open the in-app browser within Facebook, you'll get nothing back, at least from the browser. So yes, I think that getting C API installed is going to help you. You need to do it anyway for a cookieless future. But I don't think it's a complete solution to this.
Yeah, it's that's exactly where I think a lot of confusion and the misinformation is right now, just around Conversion API. A whole bunch of people are starting to talk server to server without truly understanding what that actually means. And if your head's not deep in that world, it can get a bit all over the shop, right? I think going back to the point you guys we were talking about before around iOS 14 and the uptake or the opt-in. I think it's also important to remember that it likely won't be a cliff, right? It won't be everyone updating it at one single point and everyone opting out at one single point. So it's going to be this protracted event that's going to happen, and it'll be patchy, I guess advertiser to advertiser, what makeup of their audience is going to start first updating and then next opting out or opting in. So it's not going to be this flash event. It's going to take a while. And that being said, with the CAPI, it's interesting reading all, going deep into the mobile attribution world, join a few Slack groups, join a few forums, and it seems like you can capture in this ATT world, you can capture all the data that you want. You can go in and purchase a Google Tag Manager server container, which is a public beta since August. You can do that. You can send all of your tags and fire things off, even extend the life of your tracker past the 7-day window if you want to on the GTM side of things. However, when you try to parse that data back through to Facebook, if Facebook wants to honor that honesty system of, I need to stay compliant on the App Store, if I want to make sure that I can still be on Apple's App Store, that pass through, that's where the issue lies. So, capture all you want. To my understanding, there's not going to be any issue there, because that's a bit, I would believe, possibly hard to police, or it's just a complete hard stop. None of the data can get parsed through. However, parsing it back into Facebook, that's going to be where the main issue lies.
And I don't know if people realize, but organic's going to suffer as well, because don't forget, when you're browsing the mobile app on iOS 14, Facebook needs to know who you're clicking on, or what you're interacting with, and all that data that gets collected. It's not just advertisers that are going to see this, it's organic. And the whole news feed algorithm relies on your activity, what things you interact with, who you interact with, what time, all that kind of stuff. That's not going to go back to Facebook if people opt out. So they're going to lose a ton of data. The news feed experience is going to deteriorate, and it may take 6 to 12 months because of the whole rollout of iOS 14, etc. Because I've seen some people say, it's just advertisers, I don't care, whatever. As a user, you are going to be impacted. As someone who does organic marketing, you're going to be impacted. Think about, for example, Facebook do a big push on groups, and I think all of us here have got groups. Group engagement is potentially going to suffer. The algorithm behind how posts are served from groups, like there's so many things below the hood I think this impacts. And I think that's part of the concern that Facebook have. They know how deep this could go in terms of impacting them. Now, when they called out small businesses and said, oh, this is going to destroy small businesses, like you said, Max, I think it was just such a bad PR thing to come out with. I don't fully agree with that. But I mean, what's your thoughts on kind of how that's going to impact you guys?
I don't know, man. I think it's the sky is always falling, right? It seems like every year there's some substantial change that happens that freaks everyone out, and it becomes the topic conversation, and then the world goes on, and it moves on and stuff. Like, I think what's interesting is, and I'm sure like Dave and Dee and you guys can speak to this, like the OGs, the people that were on Facebook ads back in when it first rolled out, made probably the most money, right? Like, and that was back when Facebook ads didn't always look like that. They didn't have the just crazy, we're saying, just give us creative, we'll do everything for you. It was pretty bare bones. Like, there wasn't a lot of stuff, and there was people making a ton of money because they were able to leverage just really great creative. And I apologize, I have little Quinn in the background there. He doesn't like whenever I do record anything. But like, I think people are going to figure out Facebook with less tracking and less optimization, and the people that don't are going to drop off, and so you're going to have less demand, right? So you might have some CPA change or CPM changes there, just because a lot of people that can't figure it out never lied, that were just like really bad at creative, really bad at all the things that matter, and just leveraged the algo and like little hacks and stuff. Like, they're going to get washed out, which I think is a good thing, right? I believe that like this, it's not great. Like, in the ideal world, I wish this could continue because it's great to have both. But like, I think these types of changes do get rid of people that maybe aren't at a level they should be, right? Like, that aren't focusing on the things that are important, and haven't been developing first party data, haven't been diversifying. These are things that, like, I know everyone in this panel has been talking about for a long time. I've been talking about it for a long time. I had a phone call with Ezra last night. We spoke for like an hour catching up. He's been talking about it for years and years and years. Like, and now he has it, Boom's they're doing $150,000 a day on Facebook right now. Right. So yeah, I think it'll hurt some small businesses more than others. I think certain ones will thrive. I think there are a lot of other platforms. There are a lot of other ways to advertise. Like we just started advertising on Parler. right? So we just got in Parlor. We're testing out the ad platform. The ad platform sucks. It is the most bare bones awful ad platform in the entire world. Literally, like all you can do is essentially boost a post. You can do a parlay. You can put a post with some text, and you can't even put if you want to do a link in an image, you can't do that. It basically pulls the image from your metadata, and that's the image you use. And you basically upload cash in there, and you can run $500 minimum campaign and essentially boost it. And no matter what the duration of time is, it accelerates delivery and spends all your money instantly. And so it's just awful. We're using link trust, set up all our tracking stuff, but it's crushing. Like we spent probably $20,000-$30,000 so far on it, brought about $80,000 in sales. Like it's about as bare bones as you can get of an ad platform. About no targeting, no nothing, no optimization. But we know that our audience is there. We know we have a great offer and a great product and great, like we focus on all the other things that are important. And that's what I think it was great that this happened literally before this call, the last few days we got on it, because it exemplifies the fact that like, if you have those things, you can have the most basic ad platform in the world that has none of the things Facebook has, even in the early days of Facebook, and it can still work, right? You can still make money. You can still be successful. You can still scale. You can still do these things. So there's a lot of other places to buy traffic that aren't as advanced as Facebook, but you can do well on. And I think we're going to see a move to that. We're going to see a move to advertising more on these like self-contained ecosystems, like Uber Eats, Instacart have ad platforms. Walmart has an ad platform. A lot more companies, Walgreens has their own ad platform now. All these companies that have users are bringing in advertisers. And if you control the entire ecosystem, then you don't have to worry about Apple, and you don't have to worry about Google and worry about other people, maybe Google a little bit, but like Apple, at least you don't have to worry about as much. So yeah, long story short, like not terribly worried about it over the long run. I think it'll change the way some people do things. In the short run, there'll be a disruption and we'll have to adapt and change, but it's evolution. Things change, things evolve, and businesses that can adapt and be dynamic thrive, and businesses that complain and stay fixated in the ways things were and don't change, they lose. And that's entrepreneurship. That's competition, right? That's what makes this world we're in so great.
And I think just to echo your point, I think like there's been a massive growth of advertisers. It was 7-8 million advertisers a few years ago. Now it's 10 million advertisers. And I do think a lot of those kind of hackers, the ones that duplicate things a million times and do $1 budgets and all that kind of stuff, they will end up losing out because they don't have as much data and control. And I think there'll be, I think the stock for decent agencies will go up because they're the ones that actually put the effort into create creative campaigns and think about the user and things like that. Yes, I do believe, like, you know, this page here, I think it was poorly done, talking about small businesses. Small businesses don't 100% rely on Facebook. I don't know if Facebook know that. And then that's to your point, Max. There are other platforms, there are other ways of selling. And I just found it interesting that they pulled these 4 bullet points out. Look, I want Facebook to succeed because when Facebook do, I do as well. But they do so much wrong. It is frustrating. Like this one here, for Facebook to call out another company for focusing more on profits than privacy, can they not see the irony behind that? Like, I don't know whether the PR team speak to the rest of the team, but that's just ridiculous. And this point here, hurting small businesses, et cetera, et cetera. Now, one thing they did call out is the impact on retargeting and remarketing. And I think some people don't realize this. So I just wanted to mention, for example, when people create videos and then they remarket based on video views, if someone opts out on iOS 14, guess what? You can't do that to those users. So you'll lose data there. And also retargeting, if they've visited your site and they're on iOS 14 on the Facebook app, then you can't retarget them. So there will be some impact. But again, you'll end up working around it. And you know, I think, David, you mentioned lead gen. I think that's going to be an even bigger part of this, which is own your own data. You know, Facebook is just another platform for you to take users out of. In you know, a year ago, it was all about remarketing, retargeting, and get them to buy. Now it's probably going to adapt more into grab that email address as soon as you can, or some other way into Messenger or something else, maybe not Messenger, but pull that data and then do something with it as well. They're talking about not playing by their own rules. This one's quite interesting. Apple's own platform is not subject to iOS 14, which I thought was quite interesting. Whether it's true or not, I don't know. But what are your thoughts on this? Are small businesses, you know, should they be this concerned, or is it just not really that big a deal?
I think it's just creating more fear so that the small businesses who have been affected by the pandemic and other, situations in business. Let's not forget a lot of businesses that were affected by the pandemic and came back with a vengeance. When they heard this news, they went, okay, and they just kept advertising, right? So there's still a mixture of small businesses out there that are probably moving into other platforms if they haven't already, like Max said, right? I know that some of the businesses I help out, like they're going heavy on Google ads, and they've done some influencer campaigns. Some of them just went back to old school, content marketing and trying to rank in Google for a variety of things, right? They're just exploring all the topics that we probably were more focused on 5, 10, 15 years ago, right? They're just going back to what they used to do before their dependence on one or two platforms took over their situation for the last 3 to 5 years. And so, are small businesses affected? Yes. Is it one of those things where it's doomsday and everyone is screwed? No. I think they're just creating the fear so that, people like us or other businesses are coming out of the woodwork saying, hey, Apple, don't screw this up for us. Like, this is how we make our money. This is just one of those things where, once again, like Max said, we're going back to what it was like, years ago when the tracking was nowhere near as sophisticated as it is now. Business manager didn't exist. Ad manager was very bare bones. Like, it was all about creative and your offer and copy, period. There was nothing else. If you can get those 3 things right, you could target the whole network and you'd still make tons of money. All this stuff that we have now is a luxury to me, right? The fact that I can hyper target and create these crazy custom audiences and engagement audiences and all that. I remember when none of that was available and I still did fine, right? So all this is like a cheat code. And the fact that it's going to be all affected, all right, cool. I'll just go back to what I was doing 10 years ago, right? But everyone who's been in business lately, last couple of years or even this year, and had been through courses and tons of stuff around how to run ads, and then they see this, that's where the fear's kicking in, because now they have to revert to, what do I need to learn now? What do I have to do now? And they don't understand conversion API. They don't even know where to start with that. They've probably never installed their own pixel. Someone else did it, right? So they're going through all sorts of emotions trying to figure out what do they do next. And it's just fear mongering, honestly. That's just my opinion on that.
D, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's funny, right? Because you have these people, exactly like David, like what you said. The Facebook on the past like few years, it's pretty much like God mode, right? And that's become the norm for everyone. You just get to walk around in this game and just be God mode and go broad targeting, bruh. I've just let the algo do whatever the algo needs to do. Like, don't worry about all these other things. It's become in this current world, the Facebook ad algorithm is so sophisticated above and beyond so many other platforms. Exactly what Maxwell was saying. Like, you go to some other ones, you go in there, it's like, wait, is this is shit. No, it's not shit. That's normal. What we're on Facebook, that's God mode. And so many people have been spoiled by God mode that I think now what's really interesting me is this God mode. It's built off of an algorithm and off of machine learning that has lived in a very data-rich environment, right? A lot of cross-domain tracking, a lot of cross-referencing, a lot of data mapping. And what I'm really curious about is what happens when you pull out a majority of that data and it just becomes a blind spot. How is that going to confuse the algorithm? In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if a Facebook engineer showed up and just popped up and said publicly, listen, you remember the past 3 months, 6 months, all that wacky stuff you've been seeing in your ad platform? Yeah, that's because we were trying to figure out what the hell's going to happen with this whole ATT thing. So we were making tweaks to the algo because we're just dealing with blind spots, right? And we were trying to plan for that. Keeping in mind also, like with machine learning, it's not a straight line between A to B pathway. It's you feed some inputs, the learning does its own thing and it spits something out, and you don't really have direct control over that. So it's that's what's really intriguing me, and I can't wait to see what happens there around how the algorithm's going to change. In my mind, I wouldn't be surprised if, and I've been talking to a few people about this, it's almost like Facebook's going to turn into like a DSP pretty much in certain ways, you know?
And that's the thing, like it's going to lose so many signals, but that has also an impact on targeting. So like you mentioned broad, for example, and how many people have said that over the last probably 12 months, you know, use power of 5 and simplification and CBO and broad. That stuff is not going to work as well as it did before. But also your lookalikes, your interests and behaviors, because guess what? That relies on data. And if that data is not being passed, then the quality of that deteriorates. So DSPs, demand side platforms, they're basically banner ads being served broadly to users based on some demographics and stuff. And that's kind of how Facebook used to operate many, many years ago. It didn't have all the data it has now. And I'd probably say all of us here on this call, the four of us have probably experienced that. A lot of people in the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years haven't experienced the old way that you used to target with Facebook. And the fact that you could only target right-hand side and there were limited creatives and stuff like that still made it work, but not as easy as it is now. And I think that's going to be harder to make it work. I don't think Facebook's going to see necessarily an impact for another 3 to 6 months because there's a whole rollout and the algorithm's going to lose data and things like that. But there will certainly, I'm sure, be an impact. And I look at Q4 2021 and just think, where is that going to be? Like, I think a lot of people that have huge success when it comes to Q4 is, you know, there's so many buyers in the market, the signals go up, Facebook has so much data. It's kind of easy to make Q4 work. I think people are going to have to work hard next year, right?
Yeah, I mean, it'll be challenging. I think I think what we do shouldn't necessarily be easy, right? Like again, this goes back to this kind of I don't know if it's, I know there's like 400 plus people watching this, and I'm sure it's gonna piss off some people watching it, but like as somebody that's been doing this for quite a long time, part of me likes the fact that entrepreneurship, and also we do, like, the barriers to entry have gone down and gone down and gone down because it's opened up opportunities for a lot of people, and a lot of people that would never have had the opportunity to start a business 10, 20 years ago. And I think that's an amazing thing. I think the flip side to that coin is that because it's gotten so easy, people are not putting the same amount of work and effort into it that they would have if the barriers were higher, right? Like if you want to start a clothing store 15, 20 years ago, you need to put a lot more thought into it because you need to go and actually find real estate. You need to go probably get a loan. You need to get the capital. You need to find that real estate. You need to get into a 30-year mortgage. You need to buy inventory. You need to hire employees. You need to put up signage. You need to get people in there. You need customer service. You need to return. You need all this stuff. Now I can start selling t-shirts in 10 minutes with no cash. And people aren't putting the same amount of work and effort into building a brand and doing things right because it's so easy and they don't need to. So part of me thinks in the long run, these types of events are good for the market because the people that want to work hard and want to put the effort in and realize this shouldn't be an easy overnight success thing are going to find ways to make it work. They're going to be creative. They're going to come up with solutions. That's what entrepreneurs do. And the people that got into it just to make a quick buck and didn't really want to put the effort in and looked for the easy hack and the solution, which is a lot of people, unfortunately, they won't be able to survive. And they're going to complain and they're going to say, this is not fair and stuff. But at the end of the day, like people survived, 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 100 years ago. There was advertising firms. People were buying stuff, right? There were companies that were thriving and growing back when there was no TVs, back when there was no radios, back when there was no internet. And every iteration of technology, we get a little more spoiled. But we need to remember, like, there was a time where we didn't have smartphones and we all survived, right? Without needing to have access to everyone's pictures every 5 minutes. But now we can't fathom it because we've become accustomed to it. But it wasn't that long ago, right? It was 10 years ago or so where most of us went about our days without having to check our phones 7,500 times a day. And I think it's the same thing here. We've gotten spoiled. We've gotten addicted to the way things are right now. And it's going to be, it's going to be a rude awakening and it's going to be painful and challenging to get off of that. But there's another side. Like this isn't the end of the world. And I think anybody that's trying to say it is probably has an agenda and wants to sell you something. There's a reason why they're trying to say it. They're either trying to sell you some software or they're trying to sell you a course or they're trying to sell you something. But I think at the end of the day, it's what we talked about on this call multiple times, which is the offer, it's the creative, it's building a brand, it's developing first party data. If you're able to do diversification, if you're able to do these things over the next year, like Q4 shouldn't be that terrible next year. If you're able to build up a large email list, a large SMS list, a large push list, if you're able to diversify, you're able to have multiple sales channels, get on Etsy, get on Walmart, get on Amazon, look at physical retail distribution, right? You look at like our buddy Josh with Snow, like he's doing deals with Best Buy, with Target. He's doing influencer deals. He's built up this massive customer list, influencer. Also, so when he launches a new product, when it's Q4, like obviously they do a lot of advertising on Facebook, but like if they lost that channel, they would still do huge numbers just because they have such a massive list to work with, right? And they have that data to leverage. Even you can mine data from your own list over the year. You can run polls, quizzes, surveys, and learn more and segment more and build up a really robust data set on your customers. That's what like Ty Lopez and Rudy and Alex Muir are doing right now by buying Pure One, by buying by buying Franklin Mint, by buying these different companies, right? They're acquiring massive lists and massive data, and then they're leveraging their e-commerce and marketing skills to bring them online and make them successful. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of opportunity. It's going to be challenging, right? We're not sugarcoating it. But I think if anybody come out of this call with something, it's like to not just kind of put your head in the sand and hope that it passes or complain. It's like start diversifying, start testing other channels, start developing first party data, start focusing on making sure you have an actual brand, a really great offer, really great creative that you're testing constantly, that you're iterating, that you're mining your own data, you're learning more about your existing customers, you're focusing on LTV, all these things that we've all been talking about for a very long time, but now you need to do it. We've reached the time. I've been talking about it for year, 2 years, 3 years, and it's easy to push off. There's no more like, I'll do it next year, I'll do it 2 years from now. It's like you got to do it now. You're running out of time to do that stuff.
And I think this is a wake-up call and a slap in the face for people to go back to maybe what I call old school marketing. So really understanding, for example, the 3 principles of traffic, which are paid, earned, and owned. Like they're the 3 assets that you play with. We all know about paid, Facebook, Pinterest, Snapchat, whatever. Earned is things like PR, SEO, content marketing, and then owned, I think, is probably a bit too underrated, which is own your own list, own your own data, own your own real estate. You know, for example, some people still feel that Facebook comes under the kind of owned remit. Well, actually, you don't really own that because that's Facebook's. You need to get people out of these platforms into your lists or into some other place. And I think that's going to make people work harder and think a bit differently for 2021 as well. What are you guys, do you guys focus on other aspects of kind of earned and owned?
I'll jump in.
Yeah.
I'll jump in. So with regards to the generating of leads, I'll just say this really quick on that. You know, for a couple of years now, it's almost felt like a lot of people just neglected the bringing in of a lead and nurturing them and providing value to them before selling. You know, for the last couple of years, it's almost felt like I've sent more people direct to sales page, direct to product with many of the clients that I help out than ever before, right? They almost just bypass the nurture and just go buy my stuff, right? Just straight to the point. And, you know, it's sort of taking away from what we all learned, which is like, just get them in, indoctrinate, teach, you know, give them something of value and, you know, hopefully down the line they end up buying something. And of course you could take them down that path of eventually buying something. And a lot of us that still do that, we see the benefits of it, right? So, you know, naturally I feel like people are going to start going back to that mode of, you know, getting people interested in whatever it is they're going to put out there, especially with like what Max said. And you know, when Q4 rolls around next year, you know, the people who've been building a list all year round, you know, improving their branding, getting their messaging dialed in, building a sense of community, like those are the people who are going to hit home runs the moment Q4 begins. Like they could just put out a text blast and make hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, or they could put out an email and they wouldn't even have to turn on ads yet, right? They could just do the push, they could do email, and they could do text, and they'd be set. They wouldn't have to spend any money. Of course, we all want them to spend money on ads because that's how we make our money too. But naturally, they'd be able to do just fine without it. So, you know, with regards to the owning and earned part, you know, a lot of us are probably going to be focusing a lot more on the own part, especially with generating those text message lists and email lists, especially with text being something that works so well. And yet I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. We all know it's there, right? But not many people are really talking about it, except for the e-com guys, because a lot of us do e-com. Obviously, we know the power of text, but what about, you know, the coaches or consultants or authors or speakers or all those people who have tons of email, but they've never really explored the tech side, right? So I just think that more people will put attention on those aspects in their business, and we'll start to hear about it a lot more, probably see some products around it too, naturally. But these are things that we might put more emphasis on, a lot more attention, see how we can better track it, improve it, get better conversions out of it. And, hey, might start testing SEO again, might start going back to posting a certain amount of content per day like we used to do, right? I mean, I've become so dependent on the paid ad side that I got lax on the organic side. Organic meaning posting frequently. I can admit that, right? Because I was like, screw it. I'll just throw some money at it. You'll see it. You'll buy my stuff anyway. All the people I know that were consistent and stuck to their plan and kept putting out the content and then put ads on top of it, regardless of tracking, they've still done incredibly well, right? So even I can see the part in me going, I just got to go back to the old school roots, put out the content, build stuff that people want. And then naturally the ownership part will come in because they'll get on your list, you'll get their phone numbers, so on and so forth. And then it'll all connect the dots again. But I think some of us, including me, just got really dependent on put $1 in, make 2 back, put $1 in, make 5 back. And then just reliant on that in hopes that we can just let the algo do it or let some software do it. I know some of us have probably tested some software. It's like we just throw some stuff out there and just let it do its thing. I wonder how that's going to be affected with the iOS update, right? It's like now you have to go back to actually hyper analyzing everything and making, minute decisions on what needs to be changed and what doesn't, because all these things have just made it a lot easier. So, the ownership part's going to be a lot more important to many of us, especially with the email and text side. And then earned, going to go heavy on podcasts like I've always done. Press is going to be a lot more important. Like we're just going to go back to the, I keep classifying it as organic because it's almost been bundled into that with a lot of people these days. But I feel like that's going to be one of those things that we hear a lot more about, just more people wanting to get on TV or even on, press doing live shows, or they try to do things with influencers. It's going to be a very different game next year just because, people are finally going to explore what it's like to do something outside of just putting $1 in and hoping for the best.
Absolutely. So I wanted to ask you guys about, sorry, go on, D.
Oh, I was just going to say that the direct response piece in what we do now is not going to be as direct, I don't think. But and by that I mean it's getting spoiled again by that God mode, right? It's almost like crack for advertisers of go straight to the offer of here's a discount, buy this thing now for this small little widgety whatever. And turning it into, and really exactly like what David said, is focusing on owned and being able to build a list. And I guess for anyone who's watching this that's on e-commerce, even if your product isn't a problem solving type product, we've got one client that sells like women's resort wear, which I didn't even know was a thing until we got the client. Women's resort wear, I thought it was just dresses. But that was the angle, and that is the mainstay playbook is join a VIP list. And fortunately for us, the client has a very healthy product innovation. So every single quarter, every single season, there's always multiple drops, and it's paced out once per month. And so all we have to do is harvest that list and then nurture them towards that. Keep reminding them, hey, you're part of the VIP list. Don't forget. And then when the thing drops, we use all the different push methods to be able to get them there. And I mean, before the week before Black Friday, we made them like 2 million an hour because of exactly that. And you can actually see it in the analytics. 1 hour, that's when the 2 mil happened, and then it just drops off because that's when the push went out. So it's very doable, I think, for people that aren't they're might be struggling with their imagination right now, hearing all these experts speak about like, oh wait, so if I don't, what do I say to these people if I put them into a list? I'm selling a widget. Like I can't really educate or indoctrinate them into anything. It's like, no, there are other ways. There are other offers that you can put in front of them to be able to bring them in. And by the way, this one use case that I'm talking about, we hardly discounted at all. It was literally just be part of the first batch of people that gets access to this, because once it sells out, you're going to have to wait X amount of time. So, it just comes back down to exactly those same principles again, knowing your offer, being able to creatively put it forward in a compelling way, visually as well as through written word.
Absolutely. Now switching into this update from Facebook, preparing partners for iOS 14, I saw people stressing out about this because this update specifically was for those that are doing app install ads. It says it right here, but people were interpreting this for their non-app install campaigns, e-commerce, info, etc. I just want to clarify that some of the restrictions here, in fact, most of them don't apply unless you're doing mobile app installs. So for example, someone said to me, oh, we're going to lose all this tracking view through data. As far as I know, that's only for mobile apps. We're going to lose aggregated like segments. So for app install, you'll lose some placement info and stuff like that. You'll lose some API data that would come back, etc. But there are some impacts that are coming. So for example, the most commonly known one is this thing about 8 events being passed back into Facebook. My understanding is those eight events will be prioritized by Facebook initially based on number of hits. B, they're looking to bring out a tool that will allow you as an advertiser to prioritize those 8 events. I think it's a shame that you're going to only have 8 events. So for example, I often have additional custom events, percentage of scroll, time spent on site, what buttons are clicked, etc. It just means that you're going to have to prioritize and figure out which ones you want Facebook to report on. So for e-com, I think it's generally okay. Like you don't need more than 8 events, generally purchase, payment info, initiate checkout all the way down. For those that do like to take their data a bit further, it probably will have an impact. Do you guys agree with that? Is there anything else that you've interpreted on the event side?
I mean, you're mainly, if you're like doing info, for example, you have a wide range of price points. I think there can be some impact there, like for info for us back when we were actually like really pushing it. Right now, we're kind of just giving everything away because we don't want to focus on it. But like when we were actually marketing it, we have, if you have a $7 product and a $20,000 product, or you have, webinar leads versus ebook leads versus like VSL, like there's wide range of buckets that can fall under a standard event, whether it's lead or purchase. And so I think there'll be some impact for those types of businesses that rely on custom conversions and being able to optimize within a single ad account for those different events, because they're really different types of people at different points in the journey. But yeah, I would say for a majority of whether you're a local business or e-com, those types of clients, I don't envision that 8 events being really dramatic, having an impact on like a wide percent. I think for me, at least, I see it's being info primarily, or any business that has like a big range of price points and like lead generation points, where that limitation may impact them.
Any other thoughts, David?
Not really. It's interesting that it's ranked by priority. That's going to, we live predominantly in the e-commerce world, so a lot of what those 8 are essentially plenty based off of the typical interactions. But on the attribution side, that's where things are going to get super interesting. So I've been digging really deep into the attribution, the reporting, all that side of things, just because of the fact that I think everyone's been looking at ROAS as the holy grail metric, and just on our side is a lot of figuring out how to recalibrate that for a lot of clients who let's be honest, aren't as technically savvy even in understanding what the hell we do. So now, if going from ROAS, how do we shift their lens so that they can understand more, so zooming out a bit more, which is exactly what everyone's been talking about, really, just zooming out beyond just Facebook to go, you need to be able to also understand advertising cost of sale, right? You need to look at ACoS across the board and be able to understand how all of your different players contribute to your ACoS, players being where you're spending your money in terms of advertising, et cetera.
And just before we go into reporting, because that was going to be my next part, from what I understand, although you can only send 8 events back going forward from Facebook, you can still create custom conversions in the platform. So if you only have one purchase event going back from Facebook, you can use a URL or some other identifier and say, this is a lead or a low cost purchase, the $7 purchase. There's the purchase pixel, there's the URL. This is the $99 purchase. Here's the purchase pixel, here's the URL. So as far as I'm concerned, that will still continue. I can't see Facebook wanting to change that, but you'll just get fewer signals back from the platform as well. Does that make sense for you guys as well? So on
Yeah.
reporting, like what do you do? Like you're going to potentially lose, I don't know, 20%, 40% of your reporting, assuming 100% of iOS 14 people opt out. And, that's going to take, there's two things just to reiterate. Not everyone's going to be on iOS 14 come 1st of January 2021. It's going to take time for to upgrade as people upgrade their operating systems or buy new devices. So the full impact might not happen until, let's say, Q2, possibly Q3, I don't know, for 2021. But, at some point that if it's not bad enough that we're already seeing gaps in reporting, it's going to potentially get worse. So like, do you guys have a view on kind of how to counter that?
Yeah, that's where I've been looking a lot into the whole like GTM thing. That's where just being able to have a server-side container, have that data parse through, mainly because, to my understanding, from the click in the ad platform to the website, the data is still going to get parsed through. And then on your website, you can do whatever you want to be able to collect that and then visualize that in some way to be able to present to clients or your team, whatever it might be. Naturally, parsing it back is going to be the issue. So from a reporting standpoint, that is the solution that we're looking at right now, or at least exploring to figure out whether it is a solution in the first place.
Yeah. And then there's a few things to think about. Number one is the GDPR CCPA policies from Europe and California, whether they're going to roll out more and more and browsers are going to block even more cookies or users will choose to opt out. So that's number one, which is a problem. Number two is obviously this iOS update. The other one is also a lot of browsers. I think the smaller browsers have started this. By default, they will block cookies, but you have to opt in. So similar to the Facebook process. The only interesting part of this is that Chrome, which is one of the most popular browsers, is owned by Google. Google need data, they're an advertiser, etc. They're not going to jump on the bandwagon. Same for Android as well. Google need that data. But at some point, I think we should be thinking of, if not preparing for, a cookieless world, which is in future, possibly at some point, you won't have that cookie being dropped on the website, and therefore you will rely on server-side data and server-side tracking. So Dee, you mentioned the Google Tag Manager at the server side. Do you have any more info on what that looks like and kind of anything about the setup?
Yeah, absolutely. So a really great resource that I've been tapping into is Simo Ahava. Let me actually find the link for you, and then I can throw it into the chat.
Yeah, I've heard of him. He is pretty awesome when it comes to all things Google Analytics.
Oh my God, it's like nerd fest. It's like nerd fest in there. Anyone that is a nerd on that stuff to probably get a chub just by reading the first paragraph. It's gross how like excited I got when I was reading this thing. So I've been going really deep into this just to understand. And a lot of what he's talking about isn't to circumvent all the things that are happening right now. It's more so to go, you should be able to capture your data. So this solution that I am bringing to the table is to teach you how to be able to do that, et cetera, et cetera. So he goes into real depth around how to set it up, how to have that happen, how to plug through the data layer just so that everything gets parsed through properly, et cetera. It is technically challenging for the less inducted into this world. I mean, just look at that scroll bar, how small it is. But and he's very responsive in the comments. By the way, guys, I don't know this guy. I'm not an affiliate or anything, so it's not like I'm trying to push this dude for any reason whatsoever. But it is, it's a lot of information, and he's very responsive in the comments. So just ask away, and probably even dig into the comments, because even the commenters get really nerdy about this type of stuff. But essentially, what excited me about this is the fact that in Google Tag Manager, I'm fairly accustomed to the regular Google Tag Manager already. With this server side with this server side stuff happening, essentially you still use the same interface. You just click on server side instead. You buy a container that is appended to a subdomain, so you can have server-side.depechemandalia.com, and it goes there essentially. And from that point, that's your data. It's yours. It's the container is owned by Google. I mean, you're leasing or you're paying for a subscription to that container based off of traffic. So you pay off of certain tranches of traffic. And essentially anything, the way that you set it up, anything that fires off on your website starts going into the server side container. Now, keeping in mind also exactly like what you said, Depeche, like by Google Chrome has intentions by 2022 to phase out third party anyway.
Are you kind of waiting for platforms to take this on, or would you take the initiative? So for example, Shopify introduced the conversion side API for Facebook tracking. Other platforms will start to implement this as well. And I just want to, I guess, let people that are listening in know that you don't necessarily, I think, have to go through and learn all of this. At some point, I imagine someone will create an app for, WooCommerce, for Shopify, for ClickFunnels, all that kind of stuff to enable you to take advantage of this. But I guess some people will be looking at in advance and saying, you know what, I want to set this up now as well.
I would even say whoever turns this into a service is going to make some money, right?
Exactly.
If you're going to be proactive on this, I mean, I'm about to nerd out on this right after. If I could figure out how to turn this into a service, I can only imagine how many people are going to be like, just do it for me.
Absolutely.
Right? Because especially from a client perspective, I mean, many of the people that I run ads for, like, they're not technical whatsoever. They hire out all of their tracking work. I mean, outside of whatever we build, if they want something more extensive, they hire that out. So you can imagine that all the people who put a lot of time and effort into learning GTM and analytics and all that, like if they figure this out and they're like, yeah, I could just knock it out for you in a couple hours, how many people are going to request that? Right? So hey, there's your business lesson right there. You figure this out and turn it into a service. You're going to be doing great until someone could figure out how to turn this into an app or a plugin or something like that.
Yeah, and then that's why I say like the stock and value of those agencies that are staying in front and solving problems will continue going up, because no one really, as a business owner, wants to learn this and worry about this. If someone else is doing it, you just pay them just to speed up the implementation and get that data and get your reporting improved. It may not be 100%, but it will be better than not having it without. Is there anything else that we could or should be looking at for data? So for example, I neglected Wicked reports. I had it installed for about a year, and I'm now going back and trying to see if I can go deeper into it to try and get it working a bit better. I know others have recommended other platforms. Are you guys looking at any other kind of data and reporting platforms?
I mean, we're looking. I mean, we've looked at Wicked and Hyros, and we've I know Alex and have pretty good, like, not hands-on necessarily, but like insight into there. We know quite a few people who run pretty large volume with both of them. I mean, they're Wicked just figured out early on how to do what like Zapier you could do with Zapier and offline event sets, which essentially to pass data back from your CRM directly to Facebook to make things more accurate, to be able to pass back values and be able to track that person over their entire journey as a customer, to be able to see LTV back to an ad set, audience, and campaign level. I mean, essentially they just use it. It's like link tracking. I mean, instead of doing pixel stuff, it's you're appending the URL. And I'm not a tech person, so everything I say take with a grain of salt, just in layman terms, right? It's like, I think that's something to also think about right now. It's Facebook. What's happening with Apple? It's like a one-way street, so you're losing that return trip. But you can still, like, if you want to use UTM, sub IDs, whatever you're doing, it's more work at an ad, audience, campaign level. Like, you can still do that, right? And you can still get pretty good insight. Like, that's what we're doing for Parler right now, right? Because Parler has no pixel, no tracking. It's, hey, each campaign we're running, we're just setting up a unique link for it with a unique sub ID and or multiple sub IDs depending on the creative and stuff. And we're able to in real time go into Link Trust, whatever software we're using, and see, okay, this is a campaign we spent X. Here's what revenue generated. Like, it's not fancy and it's not super advanced and automated. It's manual. It's like a lot of this stuff we're going back, like we have to do stuff maybe that we got kind of lazy and accustomed to having a lot of this done for us. But I think you're still able to get decent insight on the reporting side of what's working. It's really what's happening is you're getting cut off on the return trip of passing that data back to Facebook or Facebook to then use for optimization purposes. But the one-way street is still there, right? If you want to use UTM sub IDs to track ad audience campaign, like go for it. There should be no real issue there.
Absolutely. We're at the hour. I want to be respectful of your time. I think we're just slightly over as well. Any other actions or thoughts to add for what we and others should be looking out for or thinking about right now?
I think for anyone that wants to get nerdy, start interacting with the mobile app developer community. I mean, you know, you want to talk about being at the coalface. They're getting their world turned upside down in a lot of different ways. And because they're technical people, if you want to satiate that need to understand from a technical perspective for yourself what all the different nuances are, just start going into that world. Mobile Dev Memo, I think, is a blog where you can go in and it's very active, and a lot of recent discussion around what's happening here and how it's developing. And I think that's the other part to keep in mind, is the fact that it is moving at a fairly, it was meant to drop in September. It didn't, it got pushed back, right? And then supposedly it's in March. And meanwhile, this entire community is trying to rally together to figure out, one, how to deal with it, but then also two, what the ramifications are. And exactly like what everyone was saying, with in the long run, this isn't going to be that. It's going to be a blip, right? 5 years time, we're going to look back at this and laugh and be like, "Yeah, remember that one time I got really worried?" But what's really interesting, which is why I'm calling this Covios 14, because I believe it's going to affect advertisers much in the same way COVID affected brick and mortar businesses like restaurants, et cetera, at the start. Like, the ones that managed to pull through and not completely just have to let everyone go and shut down shop are still now serving food and being able to do all that. But in the interim, in that short period of time, there is going to be that fall off. And I would hate for anyone watching this to be part of those people that have to shut shop and throw their arms up and be like, shit, this is just way too fucking hard. Right. So educate yourselves and start just listen to the voices here and start planning out all those different strategies, because it's not like there's no way out. It's just the chessboard has just shifted slightly, but the chessboard's still there. It's just the fundamental rules of chess are still there. It's just that certain moves are restricted now. That's all.
Absolutely. Do you guys have time to answer questions? There's about 214 on the thread. I don't expect we'll answer all of them.
Okay, I'll answer all 214. Just we'll go till tomorrow. It seems like a Clubhouse. That's what they're doing. It's like, I think the Morrisons and like Perry Belcher and some of the guys have been on there for like 36 hours straight. Every time I open the app, they're in a room.
Oh, crazy.
Yeah.
There's a question about CAPI training, so conversion API. Any resources or trainings that you guys can recommend?
I haven't seen any train. I mean, D might have better insight into this because they run more of an agency. I mean, it seems like I don't know what everyone's doing business wise here, but Shopify seems to have a pretty decent, and Facebook for Shopify documentation, and it's integrated pretty natively right now. So you don't really need much training. Obviously, other platforms that don't have that yet. It's more hands-on. I haven't seen any stuff because we're just spoiled because we're on Shopify with all of our own brands.
Exactly.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Do you think Facebook's statistical modeling, in brackets aggregated events measurement, will work for optimization of website events? So this is kind of using interpretation like Google does, where if you have too much traffic, then it samples. So in the same way, Facebook's going to be sampling. What's your thoughts on that, the sampling of Facebook data? Because right now we are spoiled. We get all the data and we're like, wow, this is great. Look at the ROAS, look at the CPA. But now you're going to be looking at it like, I've seen many times in Google Analytics, you look at the sample data and it's not that great.
It's so funny.
I thought
Any
Dee was going
thoughts
to
on
say
that,
something
or-
there. It
Yeah,
it
I
seemed
was
like he
waiting for
was
the punchline.
maybe. I think he froze. That's because it seemed like that
Yeah,
was
there
a
we
like
go.
a start
Oh,
of a
okay.
phrase. Yeah, there you go.
It's it's so funny when I read that line about aggregated event measurement or whatever it's called and the statistical modeling, exactly because of what you said, Depeche. With Google, when you have too much traffic, it starts sampling. What happens when it's the other way around and you don't have enough visibility of traffic? What the hell are you going to model off of? Was the question that popped immediately in my mind, my non-technical to the nth degree kind of mind. So that's a really big question mark for me. Like, aggregated from what is it? Should it be called guesstimated event measurement? So because we're using data from the past 1 year, 2 year, 3 years of iOS users, and based off of certain proxy signals to be able to then aggregate accordingly, that's a really big question mark. I mean, put it this way: you search for aggregated event measurement, Facebook on Google, and hardly anything comes up besides that one paragraph. So I'm very curious to know what that actually means if any kind of developer docs start coming out in the coming months as well. They've got a lot to figure out.
There's a good question here, and it's something I've been thinking a lot about as well, which is, are you guys potentially going to segment out iOS 14 users from your main ads targeting?
I've never in all the years around Facebook, and I'm sure David and Dee and Depeche, you guys would agree with this. Most people watching, excluding almost never has done well for me. I don't get like you can be running stuff where it's like we're running also for On It, like Alpha Brain. Like there's a pocket of that audience that just absolutely crushes age and gender wise, and also Instagram. Anytime, and we spent millions of dollars with them, like we've gone specifically for that segment, it bombs every single time, which is it's very frustrating and defies the way it should work. But yeah, I don't know. It's never worked historically for me across dozens of ad accounts, excluding placements, platforms, genders, age. Like it just the kind of wide open aspect of it has always worked best on. Now, obviously, if you're like running like a beauty product, excluding men makes sense, but like for a lot of the other stuff, platform placement, device, that's never really worked out well for us.
Interestingly, this Q4 just gone into 2020, I saw the best performance from Audience Network. I don't know why. Generally, it's been kind of hit and miss. That's going to change because Audience Network relies on app data and ads running on apps. So I will probably wait 3 to 6 months and see how the data kind of goes, and then just test. I mean, that's always the answer, is just test and see how it performs for you. There's so many variations, like if you're running info versus ecom, browse data and kind of how people interact is going to be different as well. But I'll certainly test it and see if there is. I remember a conversation about 6 or 9 months ago when California introduced the CCPA, which is their version of GDPR, which is the whole data thing. And people were excluding California because all of a sudden people in California were opting out of traffic tracking. And therefore people were seeing bad ROAS and bad CPA in California. So they decided to take that out. I think that's just something you have to test for your own brand, product, and account. I don't know if you guys agree with that.
Definitely agree. I mean, I'll
Always
also say
test.
this with the California stuff, like that was talked about very briefly. I mean, I probably saw it mentioned for a couple weeks, and then it just disappeared after some time. And yes, were we one of those agencies that tested out not targeting California? Absolutely, had to test it to see what would happen. But then we realized that a lot of these big buyers we used to get were also not showing up anymore, right? So we just said, screw it, just put California back in. If the ROAS doesn't make sense, who cares? We'll just check the numbers on the back end and see what happens. And of course, there was always a mismatch, right? What we saw on the back end when we did our true numbers were very different from what we saw on Facebook because of the California stuff. But even then, like Dee said, like you just figured out, like at some point you just go through your data and you're like, oh, okay, well, what's in this dashboard is not truly represented by what's going on the back end. So we'll just go off of what we're seeing on the back end instead. And so I think this exact same thing is going to happen with the transition with iOS 14. It's like in the beginning, we'll have a little sense of like, all right, well, this is not good. Like clearly this is a little off, but as time goes on, we'll figure out our way of tracking it more effectively. And, I'm never going to exclude Apple users. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like they spend so much money. I'm an Apple user. Like why would I not target someone with an iPhone? So, naturally we'll just have to figure it out as we go. But, is it worth trying? Yeah, we're going to all try it at least once to see what happens. But we're not going to just completely disregard everyone with an iPhone.
Lucas says, I think you guys are all overreacting. Third-party data is outdated. With CAPI getting first-party data, all it is users opt out of tracking on third-party data. I think that kind of misses the point about the impact of app-level tracking. Like, I just want to reiterate, there's two things here. One is, and we just talked about Facebook, this impacts other platforms. If the Facebook app and the Instagram app can't collect data of what you're doing on the app, that's a problem. And then secondly, if when Facebook serve ads on other apps, i.e. the audience network, don't forget they're collecting data from that as well. So you're losing two big parts of data collection and targeting and all that kind of stuff. So this is my point that CAPI, Conversion API, doesn't solve all of that. Yes, it does help, but it doesn't solve all of that. So I don't think it's an overreaction. This is an open discussion. If you don't believe that there's anything to worry about, then absolutely, there's nothing to worry about, then just carry on as you are. This conversation is all about discussing whether there is something to worry about or be prepared for. And I certainly think there is something that we need to take a look at from what's coming up. Don't know if you guys got anything.
It's a phase. It's a phase. I mean, don't buy into it. Don't wear the mask. Don't social distance. It's not real. It's all fear mongering. Everyone's overreacting. Covios 14 isn't real. It's just fake news.
There you go. Leonardo, I think you're in Brazil. He said third world countries generally use Android, so they won't be affected. That's fair enough. Let's see what else. Does the CAPI signal go back to Facebook to be able to retarget? So if you're using Conversion API, I don't know if you guys know about that.
This is where it gets like, again, I don't think any of us, this is the problem with this conversation as well, is it's like, I think everyone's making a lot of assumptions, right? So here, what's interesting, and D probably have more insight into this, just you're more technical than I am, but I've heard like Wicked Reports, their team, and a lot of these companies saying like, hey, like you're basically going to be good with our platform. But if you actually interpret what Apple's saying to basically mean like, you can't use any data. If somebody says you can't track me, it doesn't matter whether it's IDFA or email, like you can't track them. So
right.
All that's happening with like offline event sets is a passing back is it's just using different data points to match that person, right? It might be using their phone number, their email, things like that instead of IDFA, their device number. So technically it shouldn't really matter like whether you're using Pixel or CAPI or anything. If the person says you can't track me outside of Facebook and use my data, like it's a blanket term. It's phone number, email, IDFA, whatever it is. So basically it's split here. I've heard people say you're good to go, it'll work, all that stuff. And I've heard people say on the other side, like, no, it's pretty cut and dry. Like doesn't matter what the data point is, you can't use it to optimize for, and it can't be leveraged by Facebook to do any matching or optimization. So I'm on that camp. If you read the way it's written, I think that's what it is. But we'll have to see. I don't know. We'll see once things are deployed and once people start, running ads and things either work or they don't work.
That's true. I think Kevin's an affiliate.
Let me find a link for you, by the way. While you guys are talking, let me find a link to Apple's page.
Absolutely. Kevin says, can you run multiple CAPIs for different business managers on the same domain? That I don't know. I don't know if anyone else knows.
Well, you should. So natively, and this is the way Shopify is always, at least with Shopify, like Shopify is kind of giving you the front end clean UI to do like one native pixel. And the same thing with CAPI. It's like going through the process to connect to Facebook. It's like one ad account, everything's like a single thing. And if you want to switch ad accounts, you got to switch them. I don't know. And again, this is just, I don't know off the top of my head, like if that just is the front end interface, but you can still like get techie and do it on the back end, like you could with any pixel. I don't have the answer to that. And I don't know. David,
I think it's at the pixel level. Yeah, I think it's at the pixel level.
Yeah, that's still something I have to investigate as well. Like, I don't think we've gotten that far yet because of we've been forcing ourselves to move all the way towards, conversion API. And even then, it's only been a couple months of us trying it out. Like, we haven't gotten that far to start manipulating it with other accounts and multiple events, conversion API, excuse me, working together. Like, we haven't gotten there yet. That's probably something I'll be talking about more in the coming months, but haven't tested that just yet.
D, the link you shared, what was that for?
So that's that's just a malware. If you click on it, you'll get to my OnlyFans page. So that's Apple's user privacy and data use page
cool.
that talks quite specifically about ATT, app tracking transparency.
Yeah, I've shared that in the comments as well.
Yeah, great. The FAQ part, because you have these, just in the forums, you have these smart asses that are just like, yeah, when all Facebook has to do is just make the experience worse for people that opt out. It's like, first FAQ, let me just read this quickly. Can I gate functionality on agreeing to allow tracking or incentivize users to agree to allow tracking in the app tracking transparency prompt? No. Like, Apple's just like, no. And there are a whole bunch of other deeper FAQs in there. And I anticipate that page, any related pages are going to come out with a lot more depth as more of these questions get asked by the general public or by the app developer community.
Nikki says, what about small agencies that don't have the resources or expertise to diversify and look at all this stuff? What would you guys say?
Time to evolve. Whatever it takes, make it happen. There's something to be said about being a specialist to start. It's a really great way to start a business. Be very specific and have point of penetration. It's another thing to be a generalist to survive. This is getting a bit nerdy, but I was watching this nature documentary, and the reason why crocodiles have survived for so long is because they are a complete generalist. They don't specialize in anything. On land, they suck. But in the water, they're great. They've got certain flaws, but generalist across the board. I want to be a crocodile. That's my game. Like Crocodile Central.
Absolutely. And I think that's it. Like there are resources that are going to be developed. Like, this is not like everything is going to go dark and you're going to have to figure out things yourself. Honestly, this is a start of a discussion. This is not, we know exactly what's coming up. There's probably going to be more discussions, more blog posts like Simo put together for all these other things that we're talking about. So as with all things, like everything Facebook release, whether it's split testing, CBO, or anything like that, there's always loads of resources out there. So I wouldn't necessarily stress out so much from what's coming up and worrying
Set
about
expectations.
Yeah,
that's
absolutely.
the other thing you do if you're an agency owner. And yeah, we kind of got out of the agency world, and I know I'm on here with 3 agency guys, but because we just got tired of complaining from clients because it was just nonstop, right? I don't know how well you did for them, but yeah, I mean, all you can do is be as clear and concise with them as possible about what's coming, what the impact's going to be, the fact that there will be a learning period, there will be an impact short-term in results, but it's going to be industry-wide. It's going to be across every business. It's not unique to them. So just getting that super clear, and also being clear, I'm like, hey, if you go to another agency, it's not unique to us. So agency hopping is not going to solve your problem. You're going to go to this buyer over here. Nobody has a magic bullet yet. So I would start having those conversations today. Ideally, you've had them for months, but start having them today, so it's not jarring. I think some people are going to not have that conversation, and then it's one day shit's going to get real bad results wise, and their client's going to call them what's going on, and then they're going to try explaining and why didn't you tell me 3-4 months ago this was going to happen? We could have planned for it. So be as transparent as possible, be as upfront as possible. And if you lose clients, you lose clients, right? They're going to realize the grass is not always greener on the other side. And for this, it's definitely not greener because everyone's dealing in the same grass.
Yeah.
And,
to be frank, sorry, Debesh, to be frank, when that article dropped from Facebook around preparing our advertisers for iOS 14, the first thing I did was write up an internal memo and plan with the leadership team around the client expectation side, way before the attribution, reporting, optimization, any of those things, because that for I think any agency will be the biggest challenge. Being able to communicate that in a way that is easily understood without sounding condescending, without having too much jargon, and at the same time being able to temper those expectations and plan accordingly. I think that's going to be a really big piece, because of the fact that the temptation will be for clients to either go to another agency or go, I'm going to take this in-house, or go, I'm just going to stem my spend completely until I figure things out. The same type of phenomenon that I saw happening at the start of COVID, where some clients were just like, we're just not going to spend until we figure this thing out. We don't think anyone's going to be able to spend any money. They're getting furloughed and all those other pieces. And we did lose some clients, but that was minuscule. Very fortunately, at best, we were planning for like 50 to 75% client loss, but all that planning had to happen so that we can mitigate against the risk, even if it doesn't happen, right? Productive paranoia is something that I think is very healthy to have as a business owner.
So there was a question asking if Nick would share his 30-page document. We'll ask Nick. Unfortunately, he's in the mountains.
Yeah, Nick, where you at?
Yeah, come on, Nick. But I have a document. I'll put all the stuff that I've learned from this session, as well as what I've already got. I'll share that with you guys. And also, we're finalizing our template as an update for our clients as well. I'll just put that email in there so you guys can use that as a base as well. Question for three of you, as well as myself. Will you guys allow apps to track your data if you're on iOS 14? Would you say yes or no?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I've already I've surrendered to the fact that I am sucking on the teat of being a digital citizen.
You are the product.
I want the discounts.
Yeah, I am the product.
Yeah, and give me those discounts. I want them.
Yeah, and also the last thing I'll say here, and I don't know how much longer everyone has. I got to go into a training at 5, but like,
cool.
I think the biggest thing the average person, not people on this live, are missing, but the average user that's complaining about like the fact that I should own my data and that Facebook should be paid and we should pivot and stuff that's an idealistic view. We've built the last decade plus an entire economy on the principle that we give access to amazing tools and utilities for free, and people will pay with their data. And so most companies' apps, like a generation has grown up with that understanding. So unwinding that is not simple. Like you'd have to basically destroy the entire thing and rebuild from the ground up under a different guideline. And the problem with like a lot of people say, well, hey, based on Facebook's earnings in 2020 and number of users, if Facebook just charged $60, $90 a year, whatever the number is, for the exact number, but under $100, 100, whatever it is, bucks a year, then Facebook would make just as much money and they would not be able to there'd be no advertising and stuff. The problem with that thought process is what doesn't take into account is that's assuming that every user on Facebook can afford to pay that and agrees to pay that. But what happens right out of the gate is you lose probably half the users who are in third world countries, second world countries, or first world that can't afford it. And then what happens is now you have half the users. So that price per year doubles. And then what happens is out of the half of users, another big chunk now can't afford to pay $180 a year. So now you lose another half, another third. And then the number goes up and up and up. Eventually you end up with like 10 million people or 100 million people optimistically that can afford to pay some exorbitant amount. But then it's like, do I really want to pay because Facebook's less valuable because there's less people on it? So it's like that idea, like in theory, yeah, that would be great if everyone had the same amount of money, would afford and values Facebook the same. But the reality is it would never work. Like that business model just would never work because you'd end up with such a small user base and the price would be so high and the utility value would be so low that we'd be back to like, can I have Facebook for free, please? Because I can't afford to pay it and I miss Facebook and Instagram.
Really good question from Jessie here. So she's saying my agency is mostly small D2C e-com clients that don't have resource for PR, SEO, content marketing, etc. Do you think these small D2C, so direct-to-consumer players, are going to wither and die without the God mode that Facebook has brought that allows them to advertise and grow on a shoestring budget?
I think it's hard to say with broad strokes these small D2C businesses, as opposed to saying if you don't have the ability to adapt accordingly. We'll get there. We'll get there. We'll get there. If you just don't have the ability to adapt accordingly and stay on the forefront of how to adapt to these changes, then the likelihood, I mean, businesses go out of business every single day because of the inability to adapt. And this is just another instance where life is in circumstance is just forcing you to adapt in a certain way. You know, with COVID coming, a lot of restaurants couldn't have dining in house. So then they had to adapt. Even if they could not provide catering, they figured out a way. Even if they were not able to do takeout for a certain reason because they couldn't support it, they figured out a way. So it's just another fork in the road to figure out a way. I really do think it is that. And, just as an agency owner, the best thing you can do for them is be the guiding light of voice of reason, I guess, and stay on the forefront of the news and help them survive this, as opposed to, like putting it under the blanket of there aren't these other resources. I think every business will argue that they're resource poor. I don't think, any business is going to say we've got more resources than we know what to do with, including time, right? There's always a challenge. There are always limitations. So it just comes down to how we deploy those, I think, more than, again, just like yelling that the sky is falling, because it definitely isn't.
Here's a prediction for 2021. The searches and the focus on growth hacking is going to go up. Find new ways to growth hack and stuff like that. Look, before Facebook, that was the thing, right? How did Hotmail grow? How did Gmail grow their users? All that kind of stuff. People think outside the box. Now, what I would also say is any business that has initially found traction on Facebook, it's a normal part of that evolution that you can't rely just on that one platform. So generally people will start on Facebook, then now they've got an email list, and now they're doing maybe YouTube, or they've got a blog and things like that. So I think that's maybe something for you as a small agency owner to just know the path. Just advise those businesses that I don't think there's many businesses out there that grow to 7 figures just on Facebook. There's always something else, whether it's email or anything like that. And I guarantee you there is no 8-figure business that's just on Facebook, because it's almost impossible. By that stage, you've definitely got email, you've probably got Google, you've probably got XYZ. So this is just like a natural evolution. I still think Facebook is going to be great for the initial traction phase for a lot of these businesses, but probably you're going to have to start diversifying potentially sooner. Like, I don't think it's the end of the world for your case as a small agency owner, that you're going to have to start adapting and bringing in all these different marketing forces and create this massive machine for your clients. You could still be the Facebook agency that gets clients traction. You might not take them all the way to 7, 8 figures, 9 figures, whatever your plan is, but you can still get them to the point of traction. And that's still the majority of advertisers on Facebook struggle with traction. So I still think there's a huge opportunity here as well.
This is the way.
I'll also throw this in. You need to be as much of a support system for them as they are for you. Because yes, they are paying you to get the job done. But even during COVID, and I'm glad Dee brought this up, I was one of those agencies that lost 50% of my business in a week. Half my clients just decided one day, they were like, hey, you know what? The world's falling apart. Everything's going to end. So I'm going to cut off my spend. Now, fun fact, Dee, half of those people that left actually ended up coming back as well within like 2 weeks, right? So
because you survived amazing.
You just had to be patient. And then those that never came back, it's all good because we replaced them anyway as people realized they over panicked, right? It's like, hey, let's actually come up with a plan versus just sitting at your desk, twiddling your thumbs going, what do I do? What do I do? This same situation will happen again, because when the rollout finally takes place, people are going to start panicking even more than they are now. And you still need to be at the side of your client going, hey, it's going to be fine. We're going to work on this together. Let's come up with the plan. And remember, as much as you're coming up with the plan for them, it's for you too. If you're telling your clients to come up with case studies and get on podcasts and all that, you need to do it too, because you got to get more clients too, right? So remember, we've all been through some form of crisis management in our business before. Losing a bunch of clients, merchant processor goes down in the middle of a launch, Shopify store gets shut down for no reason, and you need to rebuild it in 24 hours so you don't lose out on a bunch of sales. Like, there's all sorts of circumstances we've all been through before. This is just another one of those situations. It's another obstacle. It's going to be fine, but you have to be the proactive one as an agency. You have to come up and be the leader for these businesses and be like, look, I got it. It's under control. I'm doing all the research. I'm going to figure this out with other people. And the great part about having more than one client is that sometimes these higher level clients you have are your testing ground. You get to do things with them that you don't get to do with your I wouldn't call them lower level clients, but the ones not spending as much. I know that that's how I've been able to, figure things out when they've made changes to, the platforms and the pixels and things along the way. It's like, no problem. Let me go talk to my $100,000 a month client and figure things out with him. And then I'm going to bring it back down to the one spending 10,000, right? And that way they get a chance to relax for a moment because they know I'm doing everything as proactive as I can with this person who wants to spend thousands of dollars a day. So I could bring it back to you so you could spend $100 a day, right? So you just have to make sure that you keep yourself calm and talk to your clients. And Max doesn't have to deal with this anymore, so he's lucky. But we all have to talk to our clients and make sure, like, hey, it's all good. We had this conversation with COVID. This is not as bad. Like, let us figure this out and everything's going to be fine. And then just come up with other strategies to make sure that the business stays afloat, not just for you, but for them too. That's it.
Great response. How important is CRO going to be in 2021? So CRO is conversion rate optimization.
Huge.
Can I just add that if you're asking how important that's going to be, does that mean that
It's
you don't
already
place
super
importance on it? Like that's a concern, I'd say.
Yeah, it's already like we spend so much time because we now, like, a lot of our focus the last 6 months in 2021 is going to be continuing to build out our e-commerce portfolio. And like we realized a while ago that it is exponentially easier to double the conversion rate, double the AOV, double the LTV than it is to cut your CPA in half. Like,
So true.
once you have that realization, it becomes a lot easier to like prioritize. Right? Like, so many people get so focused on, okay, what can I do to bring my CPA down from 20 to 18 to 16? I gotta get down to 18 to be profitable and to scale. It's like, well, your conversion rate's 1.5%. Like, you should be able to get to the 3%, 3.5%, 4%. Like, that's a game changer. But you could keep everything else the same and just make some tweaks to your landing page, to your checkout flow. And all of a sudden things are a lot profitable, to your SMS cart abandonment, like even having SMS cart abandonment. Like, there's so many just incredibly basic, seemingly basic things once you do them that a lot of people are not doing. You're just leaving. You have these like massive leaks. If you look through your funnel and think about what's every possible place that somebody could be falling out, and how can I plug those leaks across the entire journey, and you focus on doing that, like they're like the Bill Grow Scale guys, like Tanner and Matt. They're great dudes, super smart CRO. Go follow them for CRO stuff. Like, we've worked with them. They work from checkout backwards, right? So focus on like maximizing the effectiveness of your checkout page. Then it's your add to cart page. Then it's your landing page. Like, if you go that way each incremental step you make on the front end, it's the rest of the process is already really dialed in. But yeah, I mean, it's huge. Focusing on CRO maximization, AOV or upsells, right? Do you have enough, upsells in place? Do you have some type of continuity on the back end that can make things profitable as well? Do you have, are you monetizing your email list? Do you have affiliates, JV partnerships? Do you have an email newsletter? Like, there's so many things that you can do. We make with our collectible brand. I mean, we did a deal because first party data, again, so valuable. We have, a few email lists with hundreds of thousands of people on them. And like, our intention was never to do this. We focused first on just building a list. It's like, hey, can we pay you for 30 cents? We'll write you a check for $75,000 and we'll do, 20, 30 cents over the next 5 weeks where we're basically promoting the product. Cool. That's pure profit. That's 75 grand right to the bottom line. And then that changes how you value things, right? It's okay. Now our leads are a lot more valuable if we know we have this whole other channel to monetize. If we have a newsletter with these different things, there's so many additional ways to make more money if you're providing a great experience, a great product, and really valuable content information to your audience. So I would definitely it's going to be really important in 2021 to focus on the back end if you're not doing it now, like it's already important, but like it's going to hit a lot of people. Like I should have been doing this for a very long time because this moves the needle way more than anything, any tweak hack I can do for manual bidding, or whether I use 5 ad sets versus 3 ad sets, or whether I use, ROAS versus cost cap, or whether I use daily stop losses, or whether I use surfing 20% versus 15%. I mean, I can go on and on and on, but like that's not going to be a game changer for your business. None of those things individually or even collectively are going to be a game changer for your business.
So true. There's a comment here that says there's a Facebook webinar next week where we should get more answers. I will share that webinar with you. It is happening, and I've got permission from one of our reps to do so. So I'll share that in the comments. But we had a little discussion about this before we started this call that, I'm looking forward to the webinar. Hopefully we'll learn something. But I have been in a lot of Facebook webinars, and often the front line of Facebook often doesn't know as much as those actually on the front line of Facebook advertising. So I hope we have brought some value. Hopefully Facebook can meet our benchmark and beat it for their webinar as well. But the link's in the comments if you guys want to register for that one as well. Question from Kate. What do you imagine the future of data protection respective of the buyer's desire for relevant ads? So thinking about kind of users want to protect their data, but they also want relevant ads. Thinking about iOS, or whether iOS users could choose to be enrolled in verified data tracking. So, trust-based data tracking, where Apple actually offers pay-to-play tracking for major companies or platforms to avoid spammy, illegitimate drop shippers. I think she's calling out drop shippers. I know there are other spammy types of marketing as well. Drop shipping, FYI, is not generally a bad thing. People make it a bad thing as well. So I don't know if you guys quite caught that, but I think it was just talking about Apple being able to verify the app behind getting your data, and then building some kind of trust network, I guess, behind that as well. Do you think that could work? Is that even viable?
I think verifying it is one thing, but I also heard in that question, pay to play. So that kind of throws the whole trust thing out of the window. Once it's pay to play, anyone can pay. Then we're back to where we are now again. If it becomes pay to play, then money is to Facebook. Money largely is no object to to anyone that wants to get into that game. It's largely no object. So that world is a very tricky game, and again, those resources that I mentioned before, Mobile Dev Memo, etc., go read those. There are some really strong opinion pieces about how a lot of the app developers believe that ATT is a very blunt object solution to what is a surgical problem.
There's a message here for Max. It says, Max is giving economics lessons. Please go to colleges and teach this, because no one seems to be doing that. So if you decide to have a career change, there you go.
That's what I was actually going to announce on this training, that I'm getting rid of all the companies. Entrepreneurship's done. I'm just going to go teach at a college for $50,000 a year. That's my
absolutely. And then by the time your kid's going to college, he's going to have a great education, right?
Yeah, and I'll be tenured. It'll be easy.
There's a question directly for me. How do you think this will affect your agency, since you only do Facebook? What makes you think we only do Facebook? We don't. Actually, one of our big case studies this year was taking one of our long-standing clients and getting them their own podcast, getting them onto YouTube, getting them doing Facebook Lives, getting them to take their email lists seriously. And they had a close to $1 million day. I can't remember exactly which month it was. That wouldn't have happened if we were just focusing on Facebook ads. So I'm not saying every agency needs to do this, but at least understand what else can complement. And one thing we focus on is traction and growth. They're two different parts of the same track that your train's going down. So some clients need traction and they need something very different. Some clients need growth. This particular client, they needed growth. So we were thinking, right, how do you take them from doing 2, 3, 4 million a year up past that 8 figures? That's where you think differently about growth. So there's a place for different kinds of agencies. You could just focus on traction. You could just focus on growth. You can definitely do both as well. But yeah, I think that's something which you need to decide if you are running an agency. Do I just focus on Facebook? And then B, kind of which part of Facebook do I want to focus? And I guess C, do I want to look at other parts of marketing as well? Let's see what else. Loads of shout outs to you guys as well. Amazing content, responses, etc. Seeing if they've got any more questions. Guys, where can we follow you? David, how can people follow you? Not personally, obviously with social distancing, but how can they follow you?
Outside of the amazing platform we're talking on right now, and Instagram, of course, you could always just, if you need consulting, strategy, planning, anything like that, David at convertroi.com. That's simple, right? You can hit me up directly and we can figure something out. Otherwise, I'm on Facebook and Instagram all day, obviously, for various reasons. And, you know, if I'm not doing that, I'm on a podcast or putting up some YouTube videos, right? So very similar to what Depeche said, a little bit of everything, right? I think that's what most businesses now are going to be doing, is like, catch me on every platform, because I'm trying to figure out which one people want to follow me on now. But Facebook and Instagram, I'm on all day. I got my Facebook group too. So yeah, that's where you can hit me up.
Cool. D?
Type in most social media platforms.com/real dose of D. You can follow me there. And if you want to email me, d@righthookdigital.com. If you want to nerd out about all this stuff and get some resources. And I mean, also at the same time, I'll be dropping an overly simplified video to try to explain in an infographical kind of manner this current state of affairs and all the different moving parts within it. So that's going to drop in the next like hour or two. So hopefully that can help everyone as well, and keep the conversation going. Exactly. I want to echo what Depeche said. It's evolving rapidly. It's developing as we go, you know, so we need to keep our ears close to the ground for sure.
Cool. And Max is hiding, saying, I don't deal with clients. Don't follow me. I don't want to know you. But if they do want to follow you, Max, where do they go?
Can't hire us. Yeah, I mean, at Maxwell Finn, I'm pretty much every channel. If you're on Clubhouse, check it out. I'm working with a few different guys there to like start some cool rooms. Rich Sheffrin and I are going to start doing some stuff. Perry Belcher, Kevin Harrington. So we're talking about like different ways that we can use it and bring in our experts to do like, I don't know. It's kind of a fun experience. And I've very rarely seen platforms where people are so addicted to it. Like people are spending way too much time on it, which is kind of terrifying, but it's an opportunity. And then Instagram, just at MaxFin, unicorninnovations.com is our company site that has pretty much everything else you could want there. But again, like we don't do really any agency stuff or service stuff, and we're giving away all our courses for free now. So really there's not much to sell there. But if you want to connect with me and just chat and learn some stuff, that's cool.
Cool stuff. There's a question here asking about, is the recording going to be available? This is streaming live to my page. Once the stream's complete, it will be there. It's not going anywhere, so you guys can keep it. We'll put it on YouTube as well, just in case anything happens to Facebook. No, it'll be on YouTube as well. And obviously being on my page, you know how to contact me, but otherwise Depesh at depeshmandalia.com. I think that's a good point to probably end this marathon. We could have gone on for many more hours. And if we were in Clubhouse, we probably would have. Any last kind of words before we go, David?
Yeah. I mean, if you're someone who produces content or has a bunch of content ideas, I mean, now would be the time to start not only putting it out there, but repurposing it. Depesh, you actually brought up something that I can't believe I didn't bring up earlier. The clients that we've taken their content and repurposed it and put it out on other platforms, just so, you know, maybe people on that platform who've never heard of this company or this individual before, you know, they run across this content and bring them all the way back into the ecosystem. It's working phenomenally well. Like it's going back to basics, right? Just put things out there on YouTube and I mean, Pinterest and Twitter and like all these platforms that maybe you've neglected for a while or just stopped paying attention to. Start doing it again, like just putting something out there. I have way too much content sitting around that I've never put out, that if I just did that for a couple months, I can only imagine how many hundreds of pieces of content I'd have ready to go, right? So if you're someone who's just looking to not only diversify your traffic sources, but maybe try something a little different than what you've been doing for the last couple of years, well, get your content game going. It'll probably do wonders for your business and for your clients too.
And then actually on that, I love the Gary Vee and also Peng Joon content machines, where they just create small videos and small pieces of content. Then they have a process that just cuts it on into all these different formats and just post it on multiple platforms. And that's how you get so much reach without too much effort as well. D, any kind of parting thoughts?
Yeah, keep your ears close to the ground, keep your eyes wide open. You know, stay tuned to the voices that are here. Be actively involved in the discussion, and stick to the communities. That's the beautiful thing about the communities that everyone has, right? It's the fact that you can tap into the mind share so that you don't get left behind, and you don't get into that ostrich mode of just putting your head into the sand and hoping that everything is going to be okay. I don't believe in hope very much as a business owner side of things. I like to be prepared. So hopefully everyone else can do the same.
Cool. Max, any parting thoughts?
Don't have a child in Q4. That's the
I did that last year.
2.5 months in. It's exhausting, but that's why I got my data hat
I love
from
the cat.
Marissa
It's so cool.
for Christmas, which is pretty sweet. No, man, I would just say don't panic, don't freak out, breathe. You're gonna adjust. It's gonna be painful for a little bit, but people will figure it out. It's just like COVID. I mean, less than a year ago, people thought the entire world was going to, we thought the economy was going to collapse. We thought the stock market was going to implode. Like everything seemed like the world was ending. But here we are, stock market's record highs, Bitcoin's record highs, real estate's record highs. Like if you had followed that process and just caved in, you would have missed out on a rally, just about everything you could think of. So just keep that in mind. And, again, just test things, try things, experiment, and constantly be a student.
Cool. I love that. And, just to kind of echo on that, just don't panic. Like, I don't want people to be thinking that your business is ending, your world's ending, and have to go and find a career as an economist at a college or anything like that. But, things change, things adapt, things evolve, all that kind of stuff. So just, I think, learn from those around you. I'm honored to, learn from these guys here. I'm also learning from the comments that you guys are asking questions, and you're challenging us and thinking, we're having to think about things slightly differently as well. So I think just kind of pick up those signals. What I would say is, like, don't follow everyone and learn everything from everyone. You have to kind of figure out who you're going to actually learn from and follow. Same applies to me. Like I'm learning from these guys, but there are so many experts out there, probably have more knowledge on this topic than the four of us. But we're just choosing our kind of our bubbles, if you want to call it that, and then just start bouncing those ideas off each other. And that's pretty much it. So David, D, Maxwell, appreciate you guys joining for this live call. The value has been immense, and I see all the thank yous and all that in the comments, the likes, the loves, all that kind of stuff. In memory of Nick, who's tried to dial in, and he's dialed out and he's dialed back in. He will be back, I'm sure. But yeah, it's been an awesome call. I really appreciate it. And hope you guys have an amazing end to the year. And listen, look, just flow with it right now. It's going to take another 3-6 months to see what happens. This is, I think, a valuable start. And then we build on from here and take it from there. And, like I said, the video will be there. We'll share it as many places as we can. I'll get the transcript. We'll share that. And any notes I can kind of pick up from these guys and anywhere else as well. And let's work together on this. Awesome stuff,
100%.
guys. Appreciate it. Have an awesome day. Thank you.
Happy New Year, guys.
Thank you guys.